This is a Chem Study film, a production of the Chemical Education Material Study. Here is the filament in a tungsten lamp. As the filament is heated, it emits energy in the form of light. Although the light appears white to our eyes, when we pass the light through a prism, it is separated into a continuous spectrum of colors. This continuous spectrum shows that a tungsten lamp emits photons of all energies. This is a gas discharge tube containing hydrogen. The light emitted by this tube is due to hydrogen atoms. Let's look at the spectrum of this light source. This time we see a line spectrum. Each line corresponds to just one possible energy change in a hydrogen atom. We see that very few energy changes occur in hydrogen atoms in contrast to the tungsten filament. Accurate frequency measurements tell us the energy changes and lead us to the hydrogen atom energy level diagram. But how can we explain the fact that the energy of a hydrogen atom has only these certain values? We begin with a simple picture of the hydrogen atom. At any given instant, the electron is separated from the proton by some distance, r. The electron and the nucleus have opposite electric charges, so they attract each other. This attraction gives the atom a certain amount of potential energy. The amount depends on the distance, r. The electron is in motion, and so the atom also has kinetic energy. The sum of these two kinds of energy is the total electronic energy of the atom. This sum expresses the laws of motion that apply to macroscopic particles. To fit the observed behavior of microscopic particles, like electrons and protons, the laws must be modified somewhat. As modified, these laws are called quantum mechanics. The mathematics of quantum mechanics are quite complex, but we don't need to consider the details of the calculations. Our interest is in the results that quantum mechanics gives. This high-speed computer simplifies the task of carrying out the calculations. The equation is punched onto cards and fed into the computer together with instructions on how to solve it. The computer then rapidly solves a problem that is tedious if done by hand. When the calculations are completed, the machine types out the energy values. Let's compare these calculated energies with the experimentally determined energies of the hydrogen atom. Agreement is excellent. Thus we see that quantum mechanics provides an explanation for the specific energies observed for the hydrogen atom. Because quantum mechanics also confirms all other properties of the hydrogen atom that can be measured, we believe the results quantum mechanics gives for those properties that are more difficult to measure. One such property is the location of the electron relative to the nucleus. What can we learn from quantum mechanics about this? To answer this question, we will consider the 1s state, the lowest and most stable energy state of the hydrogen atom. Quantum mechanics gives the results only in terms of probability. A dartboard will help us understand the kind of probability information that we get from quantum mechanics. See where the dart hits. Each throw is completely independent of the others. Observe the pattern of punctures. There are many holes concentrated near the bullseye. Toward the edge of the board, there are fewer punctures. These holes indicate the likelihood that the next throw of the dart will land in a given square centimeter. Where there are many holes, the probability is high. Where there are few holes, the probability is low. These observations allow us to conclude that the probability of the dart landing near the bullseye is much greater than the probability of it landing far away. We shall see that there is a close analogy to the electron distribution in the hydrogen atom. The pattern of holes is centered around the bullseye, just as the electron centers its movement around the nucleus. Compare it to the probability plot for the 1s state of the hydrogen atom, as generated by the computer. What does this plot tell us about the location of the electron? To answer this question, another analogy may be useful, the movements of a hummingbird around his nest. We'll use the hummingbird to represent the electron. His nest represents the nucleus. The nest is located in this small tree in a field of flowers. Let's represent this scene on a chart. Here is his nest in the tree. The hummingbird collects nectar from the flowers here and there around his nest. Let's suppose that we keep a record on this map of the location of each flower the hummingbird visits. Here's one now. We'll mark the location of this flower on the map. Oh, now he's over here. Oops, there he goes. Let's mark it. And now a third. Let's continue plotting these locations. Plotting over a long period of time, a pattern develops. In this pattern, for a given area, the number of pins is much higher near the nest than it is farther away. Again, we have probability information. Thus, we conclude that the probability of the bird landing on a flower near the nest is much greater than the probability of landing on a flower some distance away. We can discuss the average distance of the hummingbird from the nest, but sometimes he will be found closer than this average distance, sometimes farther away. In any event, we see that there are no boundaries to the pattern. Occasionally, the hummingbird lands on a flower a very great distance away. The plot of the hydrogen atom, which the computer drew earlier, has exactly the same meaning. Just as this map tells us the probability of finding the hummingbird a given distance from his nest, so this plot tells us the probability of finding the electron a given distance from the proton. As in our analogs, we see that the probability of finding the electron near the nucleus is much higher than finding it far away. Again, we find that there are no boundaries to this plot, for although the electron is most likely to be found near the nucleus, it occasionally may be found very far away. A limitation of this plot is that it shows probability in only 2 dimensions. We can use animation to add depth to the plot. This probability description of electron location is called the 1s orbital of the hydrogen atom. We note that the orbital has no definite boundaries, although it does have a spherical shape. Thus, the expression 1s is a convenient abbreviation, where the 1 indicates the energy state of the atom, and the S denotes the spherical shape of the orbital. But remember that the orbital represents only the probability of finding the electron at a certain location. If we could observe the electron, at any one instant the electron would be found at some particular location. At another instant, it would be found at some other location. What about the path or trajectory that the electron follows in getting from one location to another? Well, this is a question that quantum mechanics does not answer explicitly. Any trajectory that corresponds to the spatial distribution we see here could be in accord with quantum mechanics. Thus, we can only test trajectory models of the atom by comparing them to the quantum mechanical picture. For example, here is a common model of the electron's trajectory that you have probably seen often. It shows the electron moving around the nucleus in a path similar to that of a planet moving around the sun. We'll call this a satellite model. Let's compare this satellite model to what we have learned from quantum mechanics concerning the hydrogen atom. If the satellite model were correct, the electron would always be at a fixed distance from the nucleus. Then the probability plot would take the form of a circle. The electron would never come very close to the nucleus. But experiments show that the electron does come close to the nucleus, just as calculated with quantum mechanics. Hence, the satellite model is inconsistent with our experimental knowledge of atoms and can be discarded. Although quantum mechanics does not tell us the detailed motion of the electron in the atom, it does tell us the electron position in terms of probability. Far from the nucleus, it is low. Near the nucleus, it's high. We can consider an average radius of the electron position, but there are no boundaries to the atom. The probability becomes zero only at an infinite distance from the nucleus. Since the 1s orbital is three-dimensional, there is a spherical surface at infinity where the probability of finding the electron is zero. Any surface where the probability is zero is called a nodal surface. The 1s orbital has only one nodal surface. You'll recall that the 1s orbital corresponds to the lowest energy level of the hydrogen atom. The 1s level can be further characterized by the energy needed to pull the electron completely away from the proton. For the first level, this energy is found to be minus 313.6 kilocalories per mole. Interpretation of the hydrogen atom spectrum shows that the atom has higher energy levels. For instance, here are the energies of the second and third energy levels. Numerical analysis of the energy values shows that these experimental energies are very simply related. For example, the 78.4 kilocalorie energy value may be rewritten this way. 78.4 is just 1/4 of 313.6. and 34.8 is just 1/9 of 313.6. These numbers are most conveniently recognized as 313.6 divided by the square of an integer. Thus, 4 is 2 squared, 9 is 3 squared. The lowest energy is 313.6 divided by 1 squared. We can characterize each energy level by this integer in the denominator. The integers are possible values of the principal quantum number, n, and we can use the integers to label the energy levels. Now let's use the computer to plot the orbital of the second energy level, the 2s orbital. Each point has the same significance as a point on our map, showing where the hummingbird was seen. The pattern of points describes the 2s orbital in probability terms. Let's compare this 2s orbital to the 1s orbital. They are shown here, plotted to the same scale. Note that in the higher energy 2s state, the probability of finding the electron at a larger distance from the nucleus has increased considerably. Though this plot doesn't show it, the 2s orbital, like the 1s orbital, is spherically symmetric in 3 dimensions. Both the 1s orbital and 2s orbital show that the electron is sometimes found a very large distance from the nucleus, again reminding us that the atom has no boundaries. For the 2s orbital, however, we see a new characteristic. There is a definite radius at which the electron is never found. Since the orbital has three-dimensional symmetry, this radius defines a second spherical surface at which the probability of finding the electron is 0. Such a surface, you'll recall, is called a nodal surface. Thus, whereas the 1s orbital had only one nodal surface at infinity, the 2s orbital has two nodal surfaces, one at infinity and one at a specific radius. Quantum mechanics shows that there are other orbitals for hydrogen with the same energy as the 2s orbital. Here the computer is plotting one of these. It is called a 2p orbital. The 2p orbital has about the same average size as the 2s orbital. But note the striking difference in the contours of the two orbitals. The 2s orbital is spherically symmetric, but the 2p orbital is definitely oriented along one axis. In this case, the z-axis. Let's use animation to show the other two axes, the x and y-axes. The 2p orbital, like the 2s orbital, has two nodal surfaces at which the probability of finding the electron is 0. One nodal surface is at infinity, but the second, for the 2p orbital, is in the xy plane. But why isn't the orbital oriented along the y-axis or the x-axis? The answer is that there are three independent orbitals of this shape, one oriented along each axis. Each of these 2p orbitals has two nodal surfaces, one at infinity, the other a plane through the nucleus. We can now picture our energy level diagram like this. We see that there is only one orbital for the lowest energy level. This orbital, you recall, has only one nodal surface. For the energy level corresponding to n equal 2, there are four orbitals, each having two nodal surfaces. In fact, for every value of n, there are n squared orbitals, each having n nodal surfaces. We see then that the quantum number n, called the principal quantum number, gives a great deal of information about the hydrogen atom. It indicates the possible energy states and their corresponding energy values of the hydrogen atom. For each energy state, there are n squared orbitals, and each orbital has n nodal surfaces. When we plot still higher energy orbitals, we see that they become more complicated in shape as n increases. But in quantum mechanics, all orbitals are described in probability terms, just as we described the 1s orbital. Our starting point was the experimental energy levels of the hydrogen atom. Because quantum mechanics shows us how to calculate these energies exactly, we investigated it further. The quantum mechanical description of the atom contains only probability information, like the pattern of punctures in the dartboard, and like the map of the flowers visited by the hummingbird. Chemists have found that quantum mechanics also explains many other concepts of chemistry, such as the energy levels of many electron atoms, the formation of molecules, bond energies, and bond lengths. These successes prove the usefulness of the quantum mechanical view of the atom.
So, where am I? There I am. Hi everybody, I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show. I had run out of films to scan on my scanner because they're all off-site for the most part. So this is one I hadn't shown, probably for good reason. So I'm noticing in the comments that some of you were basically saying like, well, some of those examples are no longer relevant or they're confusing. So I could find another film that has no animations or examples and is just a chalkboard and somebody's writing on. Maybe that will make it clearer. Should I show that next? You let me know in the comments. No, I know it was incredibly tedious, which is a little bit why I kind of showed it at the beginning, kind of to get people in the mood. Yeah, that was not great, but I'm happy I showed it, and it kind of, some of the visual examples were interesting to me, but yeah. So let's jump into the deep end and watch a Sid Davis film. And this one's called Walk Without Fear. And so, trigger warning, it's made for women, about women's safety, and so there are some creeps wandering around. And it starts off with a woman with a gun. So there's your other trigger warning. All right, enjoy.
Most honored to have as our speaker this evening our Chief of Police, Tom Harris. But before Chief Harris takes the floor, I'd like to say a few words. We're all here tonight because we're concerned. Concerned that the crime rate in our community and in our nation during the past decade has outstripped the population growth 11-1. Even as I stand speaking to you, right now, somewhere, a home is being burglarized. A purse is being snatched. A woman is being mugged or attacked. I have here a letter from a woman who wanted to be here with us tonight, but she was afraid to walk in the streets after dark. She didn't feel safe. Well, we'd all like to feel safe in our homes, on the street. But we don't. And the ones who feel the most vulnerable among us are the women. As, for instance, the woman who wrote this letter. Now, Chief Harris has promised to talk to us tonight about protection against crime. How we may walk in the streets without fear, as it were. Chief Harris?
Chief Harris, that letter our chairman received, a case in point. My wife used to go out shopping late at night, but now she's afraid to go out at night.
We used to have a social meeting that met every Thursday night, but we had to give it up because our members were afraid to come.
Chief Harris, what's the police department doing about this?
Yes, what can be done so we won't feel so insecure?
Ladies and gentlemen, I share your concern. Everyone is a potential victim. Crime is an increasing problem. But crime and the fear of crime are two separate problems. Your police department is doing a great deal about the former. But you must help us with the latter. Your police department is constantly improving and increasing our protection of the community to the utmost limits of our manpower and technology. We're placing more patrols in alleys and back streets. We're using civilians in clerical jobs to free more officers for patrol duty. And we're working for improved street lighting, an important area where community groups such as yours can be of great help. There's good reason to be cautious, but no one should be so frightened that the fear of crime erodes the very quality of life. The fear of walking in the street must not prevent people from enjoying their city. It mustn't give them a fortress mentality. The more people on the streets, the less the possibility of street crime. The criminal looks for the lone pedestrian. Women are admittedly more vulnerable than men, but they are by no means defenseless. Tonight we shall together examine some of the most important aspects of self-protection. The first thing to remember is that crime prevention is the best defense. The criminal who already has the intent to commit a crime must also be given the opportunity in order to carry it out. You, must deny him that opportunity. That's crime prevention in a nutshell. A woman returning from a shopping trip, her arms loaded, is a favorite prey for the purse snatcher.
Somebody help! He took my purse! Somebody get the police! Help, somebody, please!
A woman who carries her handbag carelessly is inviting trouble, but she can prevent such an incident from happening. She can deny the purse snatcher the obvious opportunity and avoid losing her belongings if she'll stuff her purse into the grocery bag out of sight. Don't try to fight a purse snatcher. After all, whatever is in your purse isn't worth the risk of personal injury, and the thief is only interested in your valuables. Incidentally, it's a good idea never to carry large amounts of cash or valuables. And always know the descriptions of the articles in your handbag, especially the credit card numbers. If you are accosted by a purse snatcher, remember his description and call the police at once. A little foresight can save a woman's purse, and there are many other such precautionary measures. Of course, you have to use your own judgment as to the areas you must be in after dark. But if you are alone, it's best and more prudent to avoid deserted or poorly lighted streets, even if it means a detour for you. Stay near lighted areas and avoid walking near bushes or other shadowy spots. Always walk closer to the street than to the buildings, and be aware of doorways and alleys. If you hear footsteps behind you, look around. Don't assume that every man walking behind you is following you, but do be aware of him. However, if what you see alarms you in any way, look around for a store, a gas station, a hotel, or a lighted house where you might run for help if necessary. When you travel around the city at night alone, wait for the bus at a well-lighted bus stop. Even in cities with a subway system, it's advisable for a woman alone after dark to take a bus. The bus has a sort of built-in security, its driver. If you have any reason to feel at all uneasy, sit near him. When you're traveling alone, notice if anyone is watching you or seems to be following you. Always be aware of the other people around you and try to anticipate trouble. It's all right to be suspicious until your suspicion is alleviated. If you take a taxi to get home late, and it's a good idea to do so if you can, ask the driver to walk you to your door, or at least wait until you're inside. And make it a habit always to have your keys ready in your hand so you don't have to stay any length of time outside the door looking for them. Remember, always be aware. Anticipating trouble is the safest and surest way of preventing it.
Chief Harris, what about carrying some kind of weapon? Wouldn't that be a good idea?
No, I don't think so. Most weapons, whatever they may be, are more dangerous to the woman carrying them than they are to her attacker. Hatpins and hammers do not offer protection to the average woman because most men are strong enough to disarm her and use her own weapon against her. Prevention is still better than any weapon. Let's examine some more common sense precautions you can take. If you live in an apartment house with a self-service elevator, never get into it when it's going down to the basement. You don't know who may be down there. Don't get into the elevator with one unknown man alone. And always stand near the control panel so you can prevent anyone from stopping the elevator. And so you can ring for help if need be. When you go to your apartment door, always have your keys in your hand. If you should return to your home or your apartment and find the door unlocked or open, do not enter. Don't risk surprising a housebreaker. Go to the manager or a neighbor and call the police at once. If you have a job which keeps you working late and you park your car in an unattended lot, be sure it's always locked, not only to prevent theft, but also to prevent someone from hiding in the back seat. Take a look in back before you get in and have your key ready in your hand. Lock the doors and keep the windows rolled up. There's always at least one unlocked car in any lot. Keep your gas tank well filled, so you don't stall in a strange place. If you do have a mechanical breakdown, try to park under a light. Stay in your car with the hood up or a handkerchief tied to the antenna. Keep the windows closed and the doors locked and wait until the police arrive. If you talk to passers-by offering assistance, roll down the window only enough to be heard. These are some of the basic crime prevention measures you should take. The overwhelming number of women who get into trouble do so because they ignored these basic precautions. You'll undoubtedly be able to think of many more, because after all, you are women. Consider it a test of your imagination to do so. If unlikely though it may be, you should be attacked by a man, you can fight back effectively and escape. In most cases, the attacker of a woman assumes his victim to be helpless. Pure shock and surprise, if you do fight back, is often enough to scare him off. And that is your purpose, just to scare him off. So let's be rational about your chances of being attacked. They are very slim. Of course, it is possible. And there are steps you can take if it should happen. There are a few points at which a man is most vulnerable. They're easy to remember. Visualize a chart of the human body. The vulnerable areas are the eyes and nose, the throat, the solar plexus, the groin, the single fingers, the knees, the shin bone, and the toes and arch of the foot. Never forget, there's only one situation in which a woman should fight an assailant, and that is if he tries to do her bodily harm. Suppose a woman unwisely has chosen to walk alone through a park after dark. How can she defend herself using her knowledge of these vulnerable spots if she's attacked from behind? Well, first of all, scream. Scream as if your life depended on it. It might. And as soon as you can, run. Let's examine step by step what you might do. Use the back of your head. Slam it into his face. Jab your elbow as hard as you can into his solar plexus. If he puts his hand over your mouth, bite him with all your might. Kick back on his shin and stomp with your heel on his instep. Hit him with your handbag in the face as forcefully as you can. From my experience, a woman's handbag usually contains enough miscellaneous items to make it a formidable weapon. If your assailant attacks you from the front, there's a whole new set of defense actions you can use. First of all, again, scream. Being face-to-face with your attacker gives you an advantage. Many of his most vulnerable spots are within your reach. Stomping down hard on his instep with your heel may give you a little room. Use your nails. Scratch his face, his eyes. Dig in. Drive your knee into his groin. It's extremely painful and will incapacitate him if enough force is used. Hit him across the throat, or across the nose on the bridge or just below. All blows are equally painful, and as soon as you can, run. So far, you've been using what I call your empty-handed weapons. Your nails, your knee, your heel. There are some little items women carry in their handbags that can make effective weapons, but only if you happen to have them in your hand. Don't go rummaging for them in your purse. Remember, scream. To break a wrist hold, twist your arm against the thumb. It's the weakest point, and jerk away. You're then free to use your weapon, perhaps a bunch of keys. Go for the face. Rake them across your attacker's eyes. A comb might be useful, a nail file, a pencil. Hairspray or cologne squirted in the eyes is effective. And certain commercial spray devices, if used correctly, where it's legal. And remember, run as soon as you can. If you're at home alone at night, be sure all windows and doors are locked and keep your shades drawn. Some other common sense rules to remember. Don't ever open the door to a stranger, man or woman, no matter who it may be. Telegram can be slipped under the door. Deliveries can be left outside. And you can offer to make a call for anyone who asks to use your telephone. In case of an emergency, when a repairman must be admitted, always check his identification before letting him in. But should you be confronted with an intruder, scream.
Ah! Help! Help! Ah! 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 Help, police! Ah!
And remember, the best weapon is the weapon at hand.
Help! Somebody call the police! Help! Ah!
If you think no one may have heard your screams, break the window.
Help!
People will normally react to the sound of breaking glass followed by your screams when they might ignore the screams alone. And yell, help, police. Leave no doubt that you're in trouble. And remember, too, if you see it, report it. If you witness a crime being committed, call the police at once. A simple call when you think someone may need help could save a life. Even if you're not sure, call. The police officers much prefer to answer a needless call than not being called in a real emergency. As you can see, you are far from helpless. Remember, your attacker is only a human being. He has weak spots and is vulnerable just as you are. The actions I've advised you to use in your self-defense are not very pretty, but neither is being attacked. No action is too violent. No move too excessive when it comes to protect yourself against an attack. An attack that could otherwise result in your injury or death. So should you ever be attacked, scream, scratch, bite, and kick. Your object is not to destroy the man, but to gain time to get away. As you can see, the acts of self-defense are not difficult to master. You need not become an expert in judo or karate. Taking up karate may do wonders for your figure, but don't rely on it to do much else for you. I am purposely not advocating that you carry special weapons. As I've said, I think they're more dangerous to you than to your assailant. Besides being illegal, such weapons can be too easily taken away from you and used against you. Use your imagination once again. Think of a few situations where your own weapon might be used against you. Used against you. Used against you. Judo, anyone? The basic protection of any community is a well-trained, professional police department. But the citizens do have a role in their own defense against crime. Remember, crime prevention is the best defense of all. And remember, too, that in any situation in which you might find yourselves, you are far from defenseless. Thank you.
Let me tell you, Tom, that was good.
So that's an odd thing, in that it's like a presentation. It's like a presentation in front of a lot of people. I'm wearing these glasses are horrible. I'm wearing readers because my eyes are going to crap. But it makes everything blue. So normally Sid Davis films don't have sync sound. They don't have people talking, and he did that mostly because it was a budget saving thing. Like, he could shoot, he didn't have to worry about miking, doing the sync sound, that whole process. He could always do narration over, and that's what he did almost all the time, is have some narrator, voice of God narrator. So this has a lot of that, but the fact that there's this kind of presentation in front of women, it's weird. It's a weird kind of wraparound thing, and I'm wondering if Sid Davis didn't make this, but he distributed it. That's my gut. Also, I reached out to, I showed a film, Portrait of Santa, a couple of days ago, which was Ralph Hewlett, who was painting or illustrating Santa as he was telling the story. So I reached out to his son, who had reached out to me years ago about One Got Fat, and kind of told me about how Ralph was the art director for that, but also did a lot of work on Disney films, etc. So I wrote him and said, hey, I just found this Portrait of Santa film. And he said, I love that film. That film was made as kind of a promo for a bunch of Ralph Hewlett Christmas cards. And I was like, oh, that explains it. Because it seemed kind of weird. Like, what was the point behind it? Like, and the fact it was in a lot of religious films, there's just a little bit of religion in that. So the backstory with that is that was basically a promo for selling Christmas cards. The more you know. Okay, what do we got? Someone wants some Japanese animation. I don't have any handy, but I'll keep an eye out for it. Okay, next film. This one is about insurance. It's called The Hidden Key. Enjoy.
Doing this today involves the element of chance because there are many risks. Since the day I went into business for myself, I've always kept this gadget on my desk to remind me of the gamble in doing business. It's helped me to find the hidden key to this survival and success. I say gamble in doing business because of the risks involved. Risks that maybe you haven't thought about lately. The risk of the availability of working capital is present in the small as well as the expanding business. There are many influences from the outside that become risks, from the inevitable high taxes to the important job of timely deliveries. The problems of product obsolescence, increased competition, reduced profit margins, all involve risks. There's the risk of getting and keeping proper personnel. These and many more risks are involved in doing business today. However, there is a factor that takes much of this gamble out of business, and that's the human element, the most essential element to business success. This trio is that human element, with ambition and ability and teamwork. This is Walter, with a knack for overall organization and thorough handling of details. He has good connections at the bank.
I wouldn't worry about it, either of you. I'm sure we'll get the loan.
This is George, an expert on any production problem. With his easy smile and quick humor, he's very good at handling employees.
Just give me one more lathe and an operator.
Yes, the team had two Mr. Insides and Bob, Mr. Outside. A good mixer, a low handicap golfer, and the best contacts in the field, plus the ability to follow them up and make sales.
And all I have to do is get the business.
And if you don't, Bob, we'll give you the business.
Take it from me, 3 men like that make quite a team. I'm Bill Edwards, and since I believe that next to knowing your own business, you should know the business of your competitors, I can tell you quite a bit about Bob, Walter, and George. They were our top competition. They became partners because each man's talents and personality blended into a fine working combination. After the usual growing pains, they incorporated to avoid unnecessary income taxes and to limit their personal liability. Let me tell you what happened. A hard-to-beat team, these competitors of mine, always moving ahead. Walter had swung the loan at the bank, and they really got busy. They weren't afraid of work, and were often hard at it far into the night. Since their families were close friends, they could combine business with pleasure.
Oh, say, Bob, Ruth called late this afternoon. Said she couldn't get hold of Mary today. She wants you to ask her about the barbecue Sunday at our house. George and Helen are coming. We are?
Well, you can see who's boss at his house.
Well, maybe we ought to have the wives boss the outfit.
Yeah, I can see that. They know as much about running this business as we do about cooking. Which reminds me, Walter, are you planning to cremate the steaks again?
Please, Walter, not that.
Now, don't worry, George. I have a brand new system.
Yeah, but I got the same old stomach.
Working together as a team, these 3 men did all they could to take the risks out of doing business. They had protection against many types of losses. They insisted on careful maintenance to keep equipment in top condition. Good working surroundings and benefits kept employees happy. And yet, they gambled. They gambled on the most important business asset, the human element.
Where's Bob? He's half an hour late.
Well, he looked kind of sick out at your house yesterday, right after those steaks.
Oh, now my cooking wasn't that bad. Yes? My wife? Sure, put her on. Hello, Ruth. Wait a minute, I can't understand you. You said that Mary called. Are you sure? All right, dear. We'll be there. Right away.
What's going on?
Mary just called Ruth. Bob's had a heart attack.
What?
Bob's dead.
No. I can't believe it. I told Ruth we'd be right over.
And so they learned about another gamble in doing business. Well, as you can imagine, it was a rough shock. A firm cannot stand still. It must move constantly forward. The loss of Bob meant a loss in momentum, and replacing him immediately would be impossible. Besides, a new man wouldn't have Bob's contacts. They would have to do it all themselves. Things were happening that worried both men. That important feeling of confidence was fading, and it didn't help to have outsiders worried, too. Both creditors and customers were wondering what arrangements had been made to carry on the business.
Well, of course we're going to miss him. But we're going ahead full steam. You know the old saying, no man is indispensable. Okay. Thanks for calling.
Walter, there are a couple of things I wanted to check with you on.
And both are bad, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Henry just gave me his notice.
Oh, no. He's the third one to quit. Why?
I couldn't get much out of him. I think he's worried about our situation.
Boy, it never rains but it pours. Which reminds me, I thought you were going to check on that complaint. They were a good account.
I haven't had time. I never have time to do anything right.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
Walter, do you think we can go ahead?
Of course we can. We've got to.
What about Mary? We've always said the families could look to the business for help if anything happened to one of us.
We'll straighten things out with Mary later. Right now she has Bob's insurance. We have enough to worry about.
I'm afraid we'll have to consider it now. Mary's lawyer called. He's handling Bob's estate, and he wants to know what sort of financial arrangement we plan to make with her.
Why can't we settle that with Mary? Do we have to deal with him?
The estate's in probate, and he's handling Mary's affairs. That's all there is to it. He wants to see us, so I said we'd meet with him.
I suppose that means money. We can't pay her Bob's salary. Well, we don't even have anyone to take his place. She couldn't. George, I'll tell you right now, as fond as we are of Mary, we can't be expected to do all the work and split equally with her when she can contribute nothing.
Well, of course, Walter, but don't you feel we owe it to Bob? Isn't there some way we can take care of Mary without wrecking the business?
You name it.
I guess the best way would be to buy her out.
With what?
Well, how about out of future profits?
That's possible, if she can wait. And providing we could agree on a price with Mary and her lawyer. If we can't, it's a sure thing she'll be thinking about selling to one of our competitors.
Do you really think Mary would do that to us?
Legally, she can sell to anybody she wants to, wherever she can get the highest price for the stock.
But I don't think Mary would do that.
I wouldn't be too sure of that, George. If she doesn't think of it, you can bet her lawyer will. We ought to be thankful we're incorporated. If we were still a partnership, she could have the court force us to liquidate. We should have had an agreement.
We should have had an agreement with what Walter said. Yes, a simple buy and sell agreement, made when all the partners were alive, would have eliminated what the two face now. It would have removed the fears, doubts, and confusion they now feel. You see, such an agreement would have bound Mary to sell her interest to the corporation, or to Walter and George. It also would have required the corporation or Walter and George to buy. It would have been a different story. But then, of course, every story has two sides. Bob's widow, Mary, was shocked to discover that even though he had nearly $40,000 of life insurance, after paying doctor bills, funeral costs, and probate expenses, plus inheritance taxes,
the amount she had left to last a lifetime for her and her children was less than Bob's salary for 1 year. Mary's lawyer was not interested in sentiment, but in a fair settlement for his client, and soon.
Mary, I know how you feel about Walter and George. You don't wish to press them, but you simply must face facts. Now, let me see if I can summarize what we've been talking about for the last hour or so.
It's rather confusing.
I know, but it's most important. Now, we should demand that they buy you out in cash at a fair price. Now, we shouldn't accept terms, because without Bob there, we could never be sure of your getting your fair share. They would be getting the benefits of all the profits if everything goes well. If it doesn't, you would be the loser. Now, Mary, they're going to get everything they can out of this business if they see that it's going under. Now, believe me, even though there were relatives involved, my advice is still the same. Get your full and fair share of this business now.
I suppose you're right.
I know I am. Now, if they can't pay a fair cash price, we can insist that they give you an equal salary and an expense account. Or we'll threaten to sell to a competitor.
Well, that's a possibility, I should think. It's a good business. Or was.
We can take them to court and force them to pay dividends, make them justify every dime of salary and expense money that they draw. We can question every move they make. After all, there are laws to protect the minority stockholder.
But they're my friends.
You know, Mary, it's difficult to tell what people will do when they're in a tough spot. And believe me, they're in one. But in all fairness to you, you must realize that your position is not a very happy one either.
Well, what do you mean? I thought I owned 1/3 of the company. Bob always told me the business would take care of me and the children.
Now, if this were a partnership, we could demand liquidation or a complete reorganization. But, Mary, since it's a corporation, they can, legally at least, attempt to continue.
But where do I fit in the picture?
Well, you are a minority stockholder with no control, and there was no agreement that required them to buy you out. And frankly, I don't think they could buy you out on any basis that would be satisfactory to us.
Can't they just pay me cash? I'll sell.
No, Mary, there is no cash. Like any other growing business, their cash is invested in the firm.
Well, then, couldn't they borrow it?
No, I'm afraid they couldn't borrow any more now under these conditions, especially without Bob.
I wish I could take Bob's place. What did you mean about selling to a competitor?
Well, like Bill Edwards. But Mary, remember, it's only a threat. Actually, who would want to buy a minority interest in a business situation like this? And at what kind of a price?
I see what you mean. Well, then how about dividends? I thought when you owned stock, they paid you in dividends.
Well, that depends. Most closely held corporations don't pay dividends. Walter and George will certainly not want to pay dividends if for no other reason than to avoid double taxes. They'd much rather take it in salaries, which are deductible by a corporation. And remember, they have majority control.
Yes, I know.
Now, Mary, I'm not saying that they'll do this, but I have seen it happen before. The owners will bleed the company of all earnings in the form of salaries and expense accounts.
Oh, I can't believe that Walter and George would do that.
Mary, with them having majority control and with the business needing cash, I'm afraid we'd have a hard fight forcing them to pay dividends. Anyway, you probably wouldn't get enough in dividends for you and the children to live on. You couldn't count on it for future income.
I just can't understand it. Bob always said the business would take care of us in case something happened to him. That's why he worked so hard. Why we did without so many things at first, to build the business.
Now, Mary, try not to worry. That's why I've called this meeting with Walter and George. I guarantee we'll salvage something for you. Excuse me. Yes? Oh, have them come right in, please. Now, Mary, try not to let your emotions sway you. This is more than a business meeting. The future of you and your children hinges on what happens here. You just let me handle it.
A lifetime is at stake for Mary. And for George and Walter. The attorney will insist on a price and cash. George and Walter will try to save the business, which needs all their cash. Their careers are at stake. The important meeting began, and it soon became apparent they were working at cross purposes. almost impossible gamble that they could reach an agreement with such sharply conflicting interests. It's strange how old friendships can be wrecked so easily and so disastrously. They tried, all of them tried, but there just wasn't any answer. When Walter and George walked out, they closed the door on their hopes and dreams.
It happens every time. If only they'd made a simple, fair agreement while Bob was still alive. All of this could have been avoided. Well, it's too late now.
Yes, there's the really big risk to this gamble of doing business. Those three men were our top competition. And when my partners and I saw what happened, we realized that the whole tragedy could have been avoided if the three of them had made a suitable agreement. So we started looking around for the answer that would solve the problem for us. The experience of Bob, Walter, and George showed us what the hidden key really was. A binding agreement. And most important of all, the money to fund it. My business is different because I own the majority of the stocks and my partners are in a minority position. We not only have their problems, but the additional one that if I should die first, my partners would have the burden of running the firm without control or power of decision. An impossible situation. Just how much would my stock be worth to my family then? Well, the agreement was easy. All we had to do was approximate the value of our interests and reach an understanding. The problem was money. Where was it to come from? Fortunately, we found a way to guarantee that the money would be available when needed. We'd never have to pay it back, nor would we have to take it out of our business at that time. Our plan works this way. Here are 100 pennies, representing $1 full of the purchase price. We agreed to deposit 3 cents in this first year. And if our agreement becomes operative, we would receive the full purchase price, 100 cents on the dollar, tax-free. It would have cost us just these 3 pennies. If the agreement is not used until, say, 5 years, we will have paid in only 15 cents for each dollar required. And even in 20 years, we will have deposited only 60 cents for each full dollar. During all this time, a large percentage of these deposits will be available to our firm for our business use or emergencies. And if by chance we never need the money for this agreement, and we all live to old age, a large part of these deposits can be used for our retirement. What really tickles us is that our creditors and our bank are just as pleased with this plan as we are. Now, you may be wondering where we found this hidden key. Well, it was handed to us by an insurance man who understood these business problems. And fortunately, we were all able to qualify medically. I suppose that's doing business that life itself is a gamble. But it's a sure thing that you or your family, sooner or later, will be on one side or the other of this inevitable conflict. Why not make use of this hidden key, business life insurance, in order to assure the security of your two most important responsibilities, your family and your business?
Wow. All right. There we go. Where am I? I'm guessing, yeah, the organ was totally like radio soap opera fodder, because that totally was a soap opera with the melodrama of the wife, of the widow, going like, oh, and all that. Yeah, interesting little thing about business and what insurance agents can do for you and for your business and your livelihood. So, thanks for tuning in today. Today was a weird day, all over the place. It's a weird day for me too. My Prius is beginning to die. I have more than 200,000 miles on it, and big money items are happening with it. And so I'm looking at potentially getting a Kia EV, a used one, that can hold more stuff than my Prius. So if any of you have any experiences with Kia Niros, there's no way I'd ever drive a Tesla. Absolutely no way. And Ioniqs are a little too expensive. So I'm looking for something that's not super sexy. It's comfortable to drive, all that stuff. So anyways, not getting a Cybertruck, no. If I had $100,000 to flush down the toilet, I would not spend it on that. Yeah, those look so horrible. But yes, thank you for all your advice, everybody. Is all this stuff's pop up? Yeah, hidden Kia. Yeah, you guys are awesome. I really love showing films to you guys, even if they're incredibly tedious, and you seem to pull the best. Looking at the comments during that hydrogen atom as viewed through quantum mechanics, boy, the conversation was like all over the place. It was really phenomenal. So I very much appreciate all of you and your comments and your eyeballs. And yes, when I run across some of that beautiful Japanese cutout paper animation, I will show it again, but it doesn't show up often. There's only a finite number of those titles, and they do not make themselves easily available. I have to go find them. And so there you go. Everybody have a great rest of your day. As always, please rewind. Love each other. Oh yeah, I was going to say, related to that, so I was test driving Kias yesterday, and today I wrote the salesperson, I said, all right, I need to see if I can fit a projector screen in there, and I need to see if I can fit a projector, so like I'm going to go take stuff to the car dealership and see if I can fit it in before we make a sale, because that's what I need, right? That's what we do, is we schlep films with that thing. I also, you know, they're pretty great. Pretty great to pile all that stuff in, and so that was my criteria for picking what I picked, is like, how much can I fit in it? Not what type of sound system it has or what type of apps it has. It's like, how much can I shove in it? So anyways, we will see you tomorrow. Again, please rewind, love each other, and if you like what you saw, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, etc. Talk to you soon. Bye.